like me.
Welcome to The Fluent. I am Anthony K. And today, Dave Combs, entrepreneur, songwriter, best-selling author. Dave, what don't you do?
Well, you better ask my wife about that. She says that I make her head spin. I have, I'm interested
That's the same thing.
I like everything. You know, if I see something new and interesting, whether I'm just likely to just take off after it and try it out and see what happens. So
Okay.
I'm that kind of person. You know, I've done sculpting in the past. I've done painting. Anything that kind of strikes my fancy, I'll give a whack at it, and I sometimes surprise myself at what I can do.
Well, let's start with the thing that I do the worst. And just for the record, I am equally bad at playing instruments and writing. So so you have two strengths that I absolutely lack. So let's start with the songwriting and the music. Did it start as a child? Were you playing piano? Were you playing instruments? Or was it something that came on later on?
Anthony, I was born in the mountains of East Tennessee, and to a family that loved music, and a community that loved music, and a church that loved music. So I was just surrounded with music basically my entire life. Both of my parents played the piano. My mother took piano lessons when she was a little girl, so she knew how to read music. My father learned how to play by ear, and he learned from his mother, my grandmother Combs, who was born in 1894, Granny Combs. She couldn't read music. Well, she could read what they call shaped note music. Now, we won't get into that. It's a long story, but it's a different way of writing music.
It's a different way of writing? Okay.
It uses symbols, instead of notes. The shape of the note determines whether it's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, the scale. But anyway, so she could read shape notes, but basically she played by ear. She could just sit down.
So when people do that, not that it's less impressive if you can read music and play music, but just those people that can hear something and then just play it, I find incredibly talented. And if I may, I'll share a quick story with you. I had a violinist at my wedding, and he played violin, and he played. I'm trying to think of a way that I can explain it. He played contemporary violin, or he played pop violin. Maybe that's the better way of saying it. So what he would do is play current hit songs on his violin.
And he would probably improvise.
Well, that's the thing. People would come up and say, "Do you know this song?" And he would say, "No, I've never heard it." And they would play it for him on his phone and be like, he'd catch it and be like, "Okay," and then start playing it. Yeah, I found that so incredible. So when you tell me playing by ear, I'm blown away by that. I can't play with color-coded letters, so to play by ear is very impressive.
Well, my granny, when she was a little girl, they didn't have electricity, and so the instrument of choice in her church services was, for example, an old pump organ. I don't know if you've ever heard of such, but it was you pump the thing with your feet through the bellows to get the air flowing through the organ, and then it was a great instrument. And she could really play that old pump organ and sing, love to sing. But one of her favorite instruments, and I've got it right here. This is an autoharp. This is my granny's. In fact, this is her autoharp that she gave to me when she passed away. I have a note that was in the case that said, "This harp belongs to David Combs," and signed Granny Estelle Combs. That's my grandmother's handwriting right there. So I got her autoharp because every time, Anthony, I'd go to visit my granny, she'd say, "David," she called me David. I go by Dave now, but she called me David.
Everyone calls me Tony, so Anthony, I understand.
And just be sure and call me at supper time. That's the main thing. Anyhow, she would say, "David, would you tune up my autoharp for me?" And so she'd hand it to me in the key, and I'd sit there and I'd tune it up. Then I'd hand it back to her. And then she would tear loose on it and start playing something. And she could just make that thing. Now, I'll play just a strum of it just so you know what it sounds like.
The auto harp is just
It's so simple. You just push the keys for the chord you want and strum it. And so, you don't even have to know music really to play the chords. You just push a key and strum it. And that's a great sound.
But no,
so anyway,
I might have to invest in an auto harp. That might be my.
Well, they're not that expensive, but they are a very wonderful, simple instrument that has a great sound. And here in the United States, a woman by the name of Maybelle Carter. They called her Mother Maybelle Carter. She was part of the Carter Fold family, Johnny Cash's family, and Johnny Cash's wife's family. And that was her instrument. You can do a YouTube search on Mother Maybelle Carter auto harp, and you can find videos of her playing that auto harp and singing. Well, that was also my Granny Combs. And by the way, Granny Combs lived about maybe 15, 20 miles from where Mother Maybelle Carter lived as well. I'm not sure whether they knew each other or not, but same instrument anyhow. Anyway, I'm sorry to get sidetracked on that, but so that's my upbringing. You know, I'm around music in my family, church, and community all my whole life. And so it's part of my genetic, I call it part of my, it's in my bones.
So did you, I got to ask this now, did you start playing by ear, or did you learn to read music and start to play?
Probably first.
Impressive, by the way.
Probably first by ear, because I didn't take my first piano lessons to learn how to read music until I was, 8 or 9 years old, when your hands are, big enough to play on the piano.
Right.
But I have memories of before that sitting on my daddy's lap and playing something on the piano, or him showing me how to play something. Maybe it was just something very simple on the piano. So I really have no memories of any time that I couldn't play something on the piano. Now, I took lessons and learned how to read music. I can read, really kind of taught myself how to read music. I took a couple of years of lessons, but then the rest of it was just practice and practice, practice. But I was around people in my community that also played by ear. We would have on a Friday night jam, what we called a jam session.
A jam session, yes.
Yeah. Anybody could play anything. Come together at so-and-so's house and bring your instrument. We'll sit down. Let's make music. Whether it was country music, gospel music, all kinds of music. Just have fun. So being around those kind of creative people also, I think, fostered the playing by ear aspect of it, where you really don't have anything written down in front of me, but you learn the chord progressions and just learn by watching and listening. So that was also part of my musical upbringing, and that has stayed with me all these years. I just love sitting down at the piano. I'll even turn on the radio or ask the Spotify or somebody to play a certain genre of music, whether it's John Denver or whoever I want to hear, and I'll sit at the piano and once I find out what key they're in, I'll try to play along with it. It's just a lot of fun.
And then obviously that led into songwriting, and you've written tons of songs. One in particular, Rachel's song. So can you give me if people look you up, that's the first thing that comes up is Rachel's song. So Tell us about kind of where that came from, what is it about? And
okay. Well, now, first of all, I did not write the tune that's now called Rachel's Song until I was 33 years old. Don't ask me why I didn't write any before that. I think it's because nobody ever told me, Dave, you can write music. I just enjoyed playing other people's songs. When I'd hear a great new song on the radio, like I remember in college hearing Hey Jude by the Beatles. Oh man, I must have sung that song a million times. And I got the sheet music for it. And we just loved singing and playing Hey Jude. And the theme from Love Story, the piano solo by Henry Mancini. Oh man, what a beautiful song. Had to have that. So I love playing all those pretty songs, but I'd never written any on my own. And only until when it was one evening in 1981, I came home from work. I was working at AT&T, Western Electric at the time. It's a subsidiary of the Bell system. I'm a computer programmer, IT kind of person, and was involved in that level of technology all my career at AT&T. But I'd come home from work. First place I'd head to is the piano, just to sit down and play something to relax,
unwind and relax,
unwind, and just take my mind off everything else and just concentrate on it. And this evening, I sat down at the piano and I started playing this song. It was in the key of C. It sounded great. I just kept playing it, and it was not a song that I'd heard before, but I didn't realize that I was playing a new song. I just literally, Anthony, I just played this song. Have no other explanation in that except that it was an inspiration. It was a gift that came to me, through me to the piano. That's all I can explain it with. I played it. Never changed. It was always the same. A couple of days later, my wife came home from her job, and she says, Dave, what is the name of this song I've got stuck in my head all day long? You know how you get an earworm and you just hum the song all day long. Well, she hummed a little bit of it, and I said, well, Linda, it's just something I made up. And she said, doesn't have a name. She says, what? You made that up? I said, yeah, I guess so. So she said, well, have you written it down? I said, no. It's I've got it up here. I'm not going to forget it. She said,
And
nope.
at that point, did you, because you said you played by ear a lot, but at that point, did you know how to,
Oh,
you
yes.
know how to write it? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I had practiced, writing other,
Okay.
4-part harmony. I love singing as well. I'd do some 4-part harmony arranging of things, but so I knew how to write down on the manuscript. But she says, now, something might happen to you and that song would be gone. I said, okay, yes, ma'am. I will write it down, which I did. And I have here in my hand this, for those that are watching, this is the piece of paper I wrote it down on. And in what it is, for those listening, it's just a musical manuscript with the melody written out, just one note, the single note of the melody, and the chords that go with it: C, A minor, D minor, seventh, and so forth. All those chords. So that's the verse, and then the chorus is at the bottom. And that's it, just 3 lines of music. That's all it is, with no name. Just copyright 1981, David M. Combs, that's it. So I wrote it down. Didn't think much about it. Kept, I'd play it every once in a while. We tried to come up with a name for it. Never did come up with anything that fit. 2 years later, some good friends of ours have a little baby girl named Rachel. And her parents invite me and Linda to be ask us to be her godparents. And so at little Rachel's christening service, we're sitting there in this beautiful little country church on a Saturday, just us and the family and the minister. And up at the front of this little country church, on the platform, is a baby grand piano right in the middle of the platform. And all during the formal part of the service, when the minister is saying his wonderful words of blessing about this new little baby girl, my eye kept going over to that piano, thinking, and toward the end of the formal part of the service, I punched Linda and I said, hey, what do you think about me playing this song now as part of the service? And she says, I think that's a good idea. So anyhow, once they finished the formal part, I went up to the minister and the family and I said, would it be okay if I played a song on the piano? And they, of course, said, yeah, well, sure. So everybody sat back down. I walked over to the piano, sat down, and started playing. I got, maybe halfway through the song, and I hear in the audience, I hear this sniffles, and
Not a dry eye.
not a dry eye in the place, including mine. I noticed, I was having to wipe my eyes. I still kind of tear up thinking about it. It's really a sweet service, and you layer on top of that with some sweet music too. It just really turns it on. At the end of the song, I looked over at little Rachel in the arms of her mother, and I said, from now on, this song will be called Rachel's Song in her honor. And Anthony, that's how the song got its name. And it just stuck. It was the perfect name.
No, you know what? You can't make up those stories. That's how it happens all the time, because you can't go in thinking, I'm going to write a song called,
right.
It probably comes in reverse. So obviously that song is well, like I said, when we look you up, that's the first thing that comes up. Did you find that then? So now you're a songwriter. You're officially a songwriter.
Right.
When
you're one. I'm a one-hit wonder so far.
So do you sit back down and try now to write songs after that? Is it the same process? Like, how does that kind of, I'm always curious for people who've written one song or written 1,000 songs. Do you sit down with the idea, okay, I'm going to write this type of song? Or do you, like you just did the first time, do you just sit there and start playing and be like, oh, this is something new?
Well, it didn't exactly happen that way with me. I had written one song, it got its name, and, I would play it every now and then, and it was just a part of my repertoire of playing music. And I had no concept of what might happen next with that song. It was just me playing it. Nobody else had ever played that song after that, or for a while anyway. And it never really occurred to me to write any more music. I may have doodled around or whatever, but I didn't seriously try to write any more music until after I got the song recorded in Nashville, Tennessee as a demo. Just for fun. I've hired a musician by the name of Gary Prim, and we went to a studio, and he arranged and performed Rachel's song in the studio absolutely beautifully. And if we had time, I would describe for you in detail that recording session. But all those details, by the way, are in my book. If you want to know how, go into the studio with me and hear it being recorded in your head, read my book chapter about that. It's a great story. But bottom line is, once it got recorded and I saw the reaction of people from the music that Gary Prim arranged and performed, and I got it played on the radio, and the reaction from radio audiences was unbelievable. It kind of went viral, when things just kind of go like wildfire.
Right.
And that was amazing to me. And then as the light bulb was beginning to come on at that point to say, hey, you've got something here. And people that heard it would say, well, Dave, have you written anything else? I said, well, no. Nope, I haven't yet.
They're never happy with just one, are they?
No, they want more. I always want more. So I said, okay. And once I got Rachel's song out there, I've got it played on every easy listening station in the entire United States. It was a lot of work to get that done. I did a lot of phone calling and a lot of, I call it shoe leather promotion, where you just personally try to promote something. But I got it on every easy listening station. It became it was on the charts. It was the top song in several of the major markets in the United States on the instrumental music charts. Los Angeles, Atlanta, Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C. area, all those. Well, I started getting fan mail. And this fan mail would ask me, all right, how do I get a copy of this? I want my own copy of Rachel's song, and have you written anything else? So here again is this pull for, you got to do some more. Well, this was in 86 now when I got it recorded, 1986, and on the radio immediately thereafter. And so into 1987, all this feedback was coming to me. Well, I decided I needed to write some more. So I did sit down, and lo and behold, it didn't come like Rachel's song did, just sit down and just play it. But it came pretty easily. I kind of surprised myself. I'd sit down at the piano and I'd say, well, that sounds pretty good. Well, let's work on that and develop that into a song, which I did. And then I'd write it down on same kind of piece of paper, write the melody and the chords. And eventually by 1988, now it took me a couple of years to get this done, but by 1988, I had written enough songs that I went back to Nashville, hooked back up with Gary Prim, the arranger and artist, back in the studio, and we recorded more songs, and that eventually became what's on my album, the Rachel Song CD, or the album of Rachel Song. And then I've had an album, a CD at that time. CDs were brand new at that time, by the way. That was the beginning of CDs. Prior to that, we had this little thing called a cassette tape.
You still have them all.
I still have. This is one of those cassette tapes of Rachel's song. And but so I had a product then that I could sell to people all over the country. And I was getting, people would call the radio station, and they had my address off of the record or the CD or whatever. They'd give them my address. I started getting all this mail, and they would send me $10 for a cassette and $14 for a CD, and I'd ship it out. I even actually had to hire an office manager to help me do all this, because I was still working at Western Electric or AT&T. It became AT&T when they broke up the Bell system. Anyway, I was working at AT&T, so I had a day job that I had to do. So I had to do my music in the evenings and weekends. So I hired an office manager, and she worked in my basement at my home during the day when I wasn't there, and she'd answer the phone. Licking stamps, yeah. Yeah, and back then, it's funny too. I forgot about this. I would have to go to the post office, and postage back then, you had to get first class stamp, and if it was 2 ounces, it was so much. If it's 3 ounces, so much. And I had to get combinations of stamps that would add up to that amount for the postage. I'd go in the post, well, give me 2 sheets of the 32s, 2 sheets of 20. it was crazy.
They're going, all right. So 32, 12, and the 2. Here we go. And
oh, now they've got it on there. Now we're ready to go. And you licked it. This is back before.
Don't know how lucky they are these days.
Oh, they don't. And today you just go on stamps.com or whatever, and you just print my postage and go. Anyway, so we're back in the some people would say we're back in the dark ages here, but it was fun. So anyway, I started selling my tapes and CDs to people all over the country, and then Linda and I decided that we need to find a way to get this out in the retail environment. Somebody that can just hear it and buy it rather than hear it on the radio. They need to. And we had record stores back then. We had something called Record Bar, and let's see, what was the other one? I forget what the name of the other one was, but they were record store, big box stores.
Hey, for those that know me or those that live near me, or that are old enough to remember, my first job was at Sam the Record Man.
Oh, okay.
Records. So yeah, I was.
Yep. Well, that's what we, and they sold big vinyl records, the LPs, and 45 records as well. And by the way, first product I ever had was a 45 record of Rachel's song. The one with the big hole in the middle, the 7-inch.
You have to put the little attachment over the
Yep.
I remember.
Well, that was my first version of Rachel's song that I could commercially sell. But anyway, I had CDs and tapes of Rachel's song that I wanted to get out into the world. How do you do that? The big box stores wouldn't have anything to do with me. If it'd be like me walking into Walmart today and say, hey, well, I want you to carry this blah, blah, blah that I just invented. They'd look at me like, son, get in line back here. Way back here. They didn't have anything to do with me. They didn't know. First of all, it was instrumental music. That wasn't a big item for them. They wanted rock and roll, country, and jazz, and classical, all the big genres of music. Instrumental piano, not so much. So I didn't get anywhere, and I was very disappointed. And in the entrepreneur world, this is one of those hit the wall, and you think, now, what am I going to do now? What's next? Well, as an entrepreneur, as you know, you either find a way to go over it, under it, around it, or through it. You get on the other side of that obstacle. Somehow, you do not quit. Quit is not in your vocabulary if you're an entrepreneur. It's persistence and knowing that you can do this. Well, I'd like to say it was my idea of the eventual solution of how I sold my music. But I would not be telling the truth if I did. It came to me from a friend that was working with me at AT&T. She was in the office next to mine, and she says, Dave, would you give me one of your CDs of Rachel's song that I could give to a friend of mine who owns a gift shop? So she has this wonderful little gift shop in Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, which is right across the river from Washington, D.C. It's a great tourist town. She says the name of her shop is America. She sells everything red, white, and blue. If it's patriotic, she's got it for sale in her little shop.
Love it.
And I said, okay, sure. I gave her a CD of Rachel's song. I didn't think much about it. About a couple of days later, my phone rings, and it's Jane that owns this shop. And she says, she introduced herself, and she says, I've got a problem, Dave. She said, that CD that Leslie gave me of Rachel's song, she said, I play it, and every time I play it, everybody in my store comes over to the counter and says, what is that music you're playing? I want to take that home with me. She says, can you sell me some of these CDs?
I got 1,000 of those.
Yeah, right, whatever. I said, well, and I had never sold any at retail. I didn't even know, I hadn't even set a wholesale price in my mind yet. So she and I worked that out, and she says, and can you bring me some tonight? Now, we were living in the Bethesda, Maryland area, or Potomac, Maryland, and so it wasn't a big trip to go down to Old Town. And so I said, okay. And she says, just bring me a box of cassette tapes and CDs tonight. Okay, we will. Got home that night. Linda and I put the package together and got in the car, and we drove to Old Town, about a 30-minute drive, and gave it to Jane. And I thought, wow, this is great. And we had a great dinner in Old Town, and then we went back home. 2 to 3 days later, Jane calls me again. She says, Dave, I got another problem. You know what's coming. All those are gone, and I need some more. And how about let's just double the order this time? And so I jumped in the car that night, took her some more tapes and CDs, and Linda and I made that trip from home, taking her tapes and CDs every week for over a year. And she sold thousands of tapes and CDs out of that one little gift shop. And that was the beginning of the spark that told me what I could really do with my music. And how I did that was I'm a computer person. I confess I like numbers and I do spreadsheets. I'm all that kind of stuff. I made me a spreadsheet. Now this was 1988. So
like Excel version 1.
It was not Microsoft spreadsheet. I forget what it was called, but it was a spreadsheet. But I made me a spreadsheet with a column that had all the data for this one gift shop. I had how many cassettes that she had sold, how many CDs she'd sold, how much she paid me for each one, and how much it cost me to order and purchase each of those. Take and multiply all that out and subtract it out to get your gross profit that I made from that one little gift shop. Well, it was an interesting number at the bottom of that spreadsheet. Okay, well, I said, okay, what if I had one gift shop in every state? Just one. I'm not going to get greedy. Well, it's reasonable. All right, so let's make another column with 50 times column 1. So, the computer just instantly calculates that. Boom. And the bottom line number, whoa, 50 times column 1 that's a nice number. And I said, okay, I'm not going to get greedy. Let's just say I can get 5 gift shops in every state. 5 times 50, 250 gift shops. Column 3 with 250. And you get down to the bottom number.
I can quit AT&T.
Linda, come over here and look at this number. And I said, that's twice what I'm making at work. And she says, whoa. I said, okay. The light bulb is already on full bright now. I know what I got to do. I have got to find these other 249 gift shops to make this number work. And that's how the idea and the concept and the business model of my venture with my music got started. So we started searching for all these gift shops. Everywhere we would go, we'd find a gift shop and walk in it. And if they were playing music, I'd leave them a cassette tape or a CD of Rachel's song to play. And 9 times out of 10, when I get home, there'd be a message on my answering machine. It says, Mr. Combs, we like that music and we'd like to start out an order. How about send me a half a dozen of this, blah, blah, blah. So my gift shop customers began to grow. Every weekend we'd go out to a different little tourist town. And
so that's what I was going to ask. So you didn't call them up. You got in your car and went out on these trips.
Yeah, we call this
right?
Shoe leather marketing.
Shoe leather marketing.
Yep. We physically went to visit these places. Linda we'd go to a little town like maybe New Market in Maryland. I remember going down that town. And ironically, we ran into the governor walking down the street on that day we were out. Anyway, that's another story. But you never know who you're going to meet when you're out on a Saturday.
When you're shoe leather marketing, you're bound to run into
people. Yep.
Absolutely.
But we would find these shops and leave them that, and they'd call back. And suddenly I had 10 customers. And then I had 20 customers, and it began to grow. But we kind of ran out of territory that we could conveniently drive to after a while. We've already been to that town. Well, we've been to that one. Well, that's too far to drive. We can't get there and back. And my wife says, okay, Dave, it's time to get on the phone. You work for the phone company and AT&T, let's use it. So we came up with, I would start calling gift shops around the country. Now, how do I even get their numbers? This is before the internet. Mm-hmm. This is before cell phones were invented. This is the days of the phone book. Some of your listeners will be
that big yellow phone book from every town. So
no, I don't. But we were living in Potomac, Maryland, and Linda was actually working in Washington, D.C. And I went down to the Library of Congress. Now that's the library of all libraries. They had a room in that library that was nothing but phone books. I mean, it was a phone book room. I mean, every town's phone book, they had a copy. Yeah, every one. I mean, alphabetical. You just go down the stacks. So I went there and on an evening, and I'd go through there and I'd find a town or something I wanted the gift shops. I'd go to the Yellow Pages part of it and the gift shops listing. Go over to the Xerox machine, make me a copy. Yeah,
Oh,
make
see,
me
as
a
far as
copy.
me, I was thinking you write them all down, but yeah,
No, no, yeah, just copy the page, and I'd come home with a dozen or so pages of gift shop phone numbers to call. Then on weekends, I'd get on the phone, and I can tell you exactly what I used to say. I would dial the number, and then when somebody answered, I'd say, "Do you sell any cassette tapes of the music that you play in your shop?" And I'd wait for the answer, and they'd either say, "No, we don't play any music." "Well, thank you very much," and hang up. 13-second phone call. That's important because long distance phone calls were charged by the 10th of a minute. People these days don't even think about picking up the phone, calling halfway around the world. But back then, if you did that, you're going to be having a big phone bill.
Mm-hmm.
So short phone calls. And when I would get somebody on the line that did play music, I'd say, "Well, do you sell any music that you play?" And "Oh, well, we hadn't thought." I said, "Well, does anybody ever ask about the music that you play?" "Well, yeah, I guess so." I said, "Well, could I send you one of my CDs or tapes and see what people react to it? And maybe we can do some business." And I'd get a package together and send them. And by the end of the weekend, I would have had to make 30 calls to get one yes that I needed to send a package to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
30 no's to one yes. That's a lot of phone calling. And you might say that's a lot of rejection too. And I guess it is, when you get used to hearing
sales.
yeah, you're right. That is sales 101. Get used to, but I've learned to think that no doesn't mean no. No just means not yet.
Not yet.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so anyway, by the end of the weekend, I'd have a stack of packages to mail out. Well, 1 in 30 is not a good hit ratio. That's not really great. So I said, there's got to be a way. And I had noticed that my success, Anthony, was the best when I was calling in a tourist town. Tourist towns, I would get, about every third or fourth call, fifth call, somebody, "Oh yeah, we play music in our shop, and yeah, we hadn't thought about it. Yeah, we'd like to do that." So I said, okay, I need to stop calling these big metropolitan towns with gift shops. I need to start calling, like in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and like around Toronto. I'm sure there's some nice tourist towns that are quaint, and you just go in and have
in the little towns where there's it's immediate. The second you said that's what worked the first time, I just thought, too bad you didn't have me around then. I would have said, hit up all the tourist towns. Is the first thing that popped into my head.
Where were you, Anthony?
Sorry, I apologize.
That's all right. Well, you may. This was in 1986, 87, probably most of the time. I don't know how old
10,
you
11
were.
years old. You could have put me to work.
Okay, shoot. You could have helped me out.
I could have helped.
So anyway, I decided I need to find out and only call the gift shop towns. Well, but I didn't know where the gift shop towns were. Now I knew where they were locally, of course, but I didn't know where they were in Missouri or Kansas or Mississippi or even California, the big state of California. I knew there were a lot of them there, but I didn't know where they were. I said, there's got to be a way to get that list. Mm-hmm. And that would just really speed things up. I called the chambers of commerce of each of the states, the Department of Commerce. Do you all have a list for Arizona, of all the tourist towns in Arizona? "No, we don't have anything like that. I'm sorry." And I said, and nobody had it. I went to the Commerce Department in DC. They didn't have it either. Nobody had it. I said, okay, I'm not giving up. I know there's a way to do this. I'm going to calculate this because first of all, I'm a numbers person. I'm extremely analytical. I can connect dots pretty quickly. And so I thought, all I need is 2 pieces of information. How many gift shops are in a town? You just need to count them up. Let's say the Gatlinburg, Tennessee, for example. It's a big tourist town. There's probably, I don't know, 85 gift shops in Gatlinburg. All right. What is the permanent population, resident population of Gatlinburg? And I've looked it up. It's about 2,500 people, something like that. Not many.
2,500.
There's no way.
50 gift shops.
There's no way in the world 2,500 people can support 50 gift shops, right? So ding, 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 that means the customers come from outside of town. Well, that's the definition of a tourist town, is when people come into town to spend their time and their money. So I said, okay, that's the two pieces of information I got to have. So where do I get that information? So first of all, I needed to know where are all the gift shops in the whole country. I did find out back then I could purchase the mailing list of all the gift shops in the entire country. Today, you would just go online and pay it, and it would download, and you'd have the file right now like that. I had to buy it, and it was sent to me in a computer printout. It was about 4 inches thick on that big, wide, green striped computer paper. You remember the big paper?
The one with either side.
The holes on this side. Yep, it came out of a high-speed printer, and it was every line was a gift shop, and it was alphabetical, within town, within state, perfect order. So it cost me, I think it cost me $250. It was a big expense for me, but it was absolutely worth it. I spent days going through that printout, counting up the number of gift shops in every town. And I made a spreadsheet with the town name and how many gift shops were in that town. Just kept records. I got through the whole thing. Then I said, okay, now I need to know how many people, what's the population of all those places? Where can you get that? Well, you know, the Census Bureau all has that, but they didn't have any way I could purchase that in a convenient form. But if you want to know something, here's a tip. Go to your local librarian. These people, if you've ever been in a library, and you can ask a librarian, if they don't know, they won't just say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. They'll spend all day long trying to find it for you. They are wonderful people. So the library was across the street from my office where I was working at AT&T. At lunchtime, I went over to the library and I told the lady what I wanted. And she says, I got just the thing for you. And she said, let's go over to this table. I'll show you this book. And I happen to have this book here with me. I ended up buying my own copy of it. This book, for those of you listening, I'm holding a book that's about, 15 by 20, and it's about 1.5 inches thick. It weighs 12 pounds.
That looks like one of those gag checks. That's massive.
Yeah, almost. It's huge, and it's heavy. And it's the Rand McNally Commercial Atlas Marketing Guide. Inside this hardbound book, I'll open it up. Maybe I'll get to it has maps, detailed maps of every state. This happens to be Minnesota. And in the back of the book, though, was where the gold was, in my opinion, or the diamonds. In here was a listing by alphabetical order, by state, not just every town, every crossroad in the place. And part of the data listed, guess what, is the census population of that place. So I ended up buying this book. This book, I think it cost me about $125 back in 1987, but it was worth it, because then I had this book that I could take my list of towns and gift shops, look up the population, put that in my spreadsheet. When I finished that process, that took a long time too, as you can imagine. All those, by the way, there's 75,000 gift shops in the country. At that time, there's more than that now, I'm sure. But anyway, so then I had my spreadsheet with the population, the gift shop count, another column that simply said, what is the ratio of population per gift shop? Just let the computer calculate it. Now I want my spreadsheet sorted by that ratio, by state. So within every state, I want the one with the lowest ratio at the top. Well, guess what? It was like cream rising to the top. Here in Tennessee, Gatlinburg was the top listing. In North Carolina, Blowing Rock, North Carolina is the top. And we already knew those answers. In Virginia, it was Occoquan and places like that. They're tourist towns. I knew it. Went out into California. It didn't matter what the state was. Had never even stepped foot in that state. Right at the top of the list was a town, and 100% certainty it was a gift shop town, a tourist town. Well, I started calling only those from the top of the list down, and my hit rate, just like I talked a while ago, it went from 1 in 30 to 1 in 5 or 4 or 3. It was just amazing. I made so many phone calls during those days. I would start at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning making my phone calls, and I'd go till 6 o'clock in the evening, about supper time, until my voice gave out. I was literally talking all day long. And that, if you're like, when you do podcasts all day long, by the end of the day,
next day I got to take a day off because I can't do it.
yeah, you don't want to wear out, it's a strain on your vocal cords. But anyway, so I made so many phone calls that by Monday morning, I would have so many packages to mail out to prospective gift shops. I'd have to make 2 trips to the post office in my car because I couldn't hold all the packages. In the trunk, the back seat, the passenger seat were all stacked up with these packages of prospects. And so that's how I grew my gift shop customers from that first little shop, America in Old Town, to over 1,000 gift shops all over the whole country. I mean, I blanketed the whole country. And me and a piano player in California and one in Texas were the 3 people that were doing this kind of same thing. They were producing this instrumental original music of their own and selling it through gift shops. And nobody else was doing it at that time. And so we were the ones who really invented what today is called the play and sell market. Everybody does it now. But back then it was just me and these 2 other fellows that were doing it. So I helped invent the play and sell market. But for me, I rode that cycle all the way to the top. By 1992, I was able to have lunch with my boss at AT&T and say, Bill, I hate to tell you this, but I just cannot afford to work here anymore. And we got a good laugh out. He knew what I was doing on weekends, and so he was happy for me. And it turned out we were going through a downturn anyway, and he was about to have to lay somebody off, one of our younger people. And he said, Dave, you just saved so and so's job. I said, well, it was meant to be. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for you. And he said, well, I'm happy for you. It was a win-win situation. But
well, if you
1992,
it was probably meant to be from the first time you sat down and Rachel's song just came through you. So
yeah,
there's that. So I just wanted to one last thing, because you did mention the book briefly. So you kind of go through this path. When does the book come into play? And tell me how you got into. Did you write the book? Was it ghost written?
Nope, I wrote.
What was that like? And then and when are we going to make a movie? No, okay. Let's start with the book. Let's start with the book.
Well, the book came about when the pandemic hit. Do you remember? Was it 2.5 years ago or so? I don't know. It seems like
2 years and a couple of months, something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost unbelievable that it's been that long. But when that came along, of course, over the years, I had gotten letters from over 50,000 people had written to me. I wrote an article in Guidepost magazine that generated over 10,000 letters and stuff immediately. So I had accumulated a large number of people, and of course, I added them to my mailing list. And I think my last mailing when I did an album was to 27,000 people in the U.S. mail that I sent out, here's my new album. So the list had grown. And so I'd gotten all these wonderful notes and letters that were anecdotal evidence that what my music did for them, how it touched their hearts, it touched their souls, it really meant something to them. And they, somebody was telling me yesterday that, if 50,000 people took the trouble to sit down and look you up, find out about you and write you a letter, how many millions of people didn't ever take the trouble to do that? So I know there was a lot of people that this music really touched. And so all these stories, and I would tell these stories that I've just relayed to you to, like a Rotary Club or something like that. And people would say, hey, Dave, you need to write a book about that. That'd be an interesting book. Well, the pandemic came along, and Linda and I are sitting there one evening, and like you and the rest of the world sitting there, okay, we can't go visit, we can't go out to eat, we can't do this. What do we do now? Yeah, what do we do now? And she says, Dave, that book we've been talking about? And she had come up with the title years ago, because this title of Touched by the Music, that was my wife's. She coined that. She said, if you ever write a book, and in fact, she had done an outline for me before. She said, title is Touched by the Music, and you need this story and this story and this story. Okay. And she said, okay, Dave, you're not doing anything else. We can't go anywhere else. Get on your computer. Let's write those stories down and begin the writing of your book. I said, okay, I'm in. Let's do it. Well, I started that, and then fortunate for me, along came an opportunity to spend some time at a retreat virtually with Jack Canfield. Everybody knows Jack Canfield as the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books.
Yes. It sounded
And, he is a bit, he sold more books out of according to the New York Times, than probably any other author, because the series Chicken Soup for the Soul is sold, I think it's 700 plus million copies. That's a lot of books. Well, I got an opportunity to spend 3 days with Jack Canfield. And the first thing that happened was when we first met each other, and he heard about my music and Rachel's song. At the next break we took, we were doing all this by Zoom, and we took a break. And when we came back, Jack had gone on iTunes and downloaded Rachel's song and got it. And he he came back and he said, Dave, that song, Rachel's song, is unbelievable. He said, I bought it immediately. I listened to it, and I listened to it again. He said, yeah, that is special. And so we just kind of struck up a good friendship, and I told him about all the stories about the song and how I wrote it, and all the 50,000 letters I'd gotten. And he said, Dave, you definitely got to write this book. And he said, I'll help you. He said, we'll talk about all this, and we'll get you an editor and all this kind of thing to get the book written. So I spent the next 9 months writing these stories. I hired 2 editors to help me with the structure and the writing, and I would write it, but then they would embellish it or tell me, you need to put some dialogue in here. I wasn't that great a writer. Jack Canfield told me that I was a good writer, but I still needed some improvement on storytelling. Right. And as you know, the storytelling is the secret.
That's the key. I'm a great storyteller. I just don't know how to put it onto paper. So.
Well, there is such a thing as a tape recorder. You can. I'm sorry about that. Fair enough. It can be transcribed. I know. In fact, some of my stories, I tried that because I like telling my story, and it's faster to just tell it and let the computer record it, and then you can transcribe it later. And that's a good technique. But anyway, I spent a lot of time massaging these stories and putting dialogue in them and making them sound like me telling the story. And I'm told by the readers of my book that those that know me, that they can hear my voice when they're reading the book. And I think that's a key.
That is key. Absolutely.
So that's how the book came about. And that took about 9 months to write all those stories down. So last October of last year, 2021, is when I published my book. And it became number 1 in several categories on Amazon, done real well. And the feedback has just been great. But it really, my goal wasn't to sell. I'd like to sell millions of books, and maybe that'll happen eventually. But my real goal was to tell people the stories so that they would also go and listen to the music. It's the music that this is all about, because the music is what touches people's hearts and souls and helps them through their stress or whatever. Many of these 50,000 anecdotal stories are about how my music literally, physically helped somebody through a health situation or a stressful situation. And so I know from the anecdotal stories that the music does touch people's hearts and souls. And that's really my mission, is through the book and through these podcasts to spread the word. That's all I want, is to spread the word about my music so people will go hear it and hopefully be blessed by it.
I wasn't kidding about making the movie. We'll talk about that offline. But I wanted to thank you very much for your time. The music is wonderful. I'm going to definitely take a read of the book because, listen, when we reached out to each other, that's the first thing I did, kind of like everybody would do, is like, who is this guy? What is this? Oh, this is not like it. Music does. For so many people, music does, like you would sit down, like you mentioned earlier, sit down and just play to relax, listen to relax. That's what a lot of people do. And some that don't, I keep telling them, they're like, I'm really stressed out about work. And so then, you know what? Detach from everybody else, go play your favorite music and just sit there and do nothing and watch how it changes your mood. You will feel better. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing the stories, Dave. Really a pleasure to meet you.
Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. We could probably talk all day long, but
we probably could. Oh, where can people find you, find the music? Probably that's important too.
It is. And I've tried to I have made it very simple. Just remember my last name, Combs, C-O-M-B-S, and go to combsmusic.com. And I have a very simple web page. On the left side of the page is for those of you watching, is a picture of the cover of my book. And underneath it on my website is a link that says purchase on Amazon. And you click there and it'll take you to the Amazon page about my book. You can listen to part of it. You can read the sample pages. You can order a paperback, an ebook with Kindle, or you can, if you're an Audible subscriber, you can listen to me read it to you for 8 hours. If you want to hear me reading it to you, you can get an Audible book. And on the other side of my homepage is the picture of the cover of Rachel's song. And underneath it, yep, there's a link that says purchase at amazon.com. And you go there and you can buy a CD, you can download the MP3 file of the whole album, or you can buy one song, or if you're an Amazon Music subscriber, you can stream it, whatever. So that's the CD. And like we talked about earlier, right in the middle of the page is a link that says play Rachel's song. And you can also, there's a thing that if you want to download it, you can. And it is the MP3 file that's the same that's on the album. It is the original recording, that the demo recording that I got made with Gary Prim in 1986. Has not been remastered, remixed, anything. What you're hearing when you listen to Rachel's song is what I heard in the studio for the first time that I'd ever heard anybody else play my music but me. And I think you'll enjoy the music, and I'd love to hear from you. Down at the bottom of the page, you'll see a link to write me an email. It's dave@combsmusic.com. Send me an email, and I'd love to hear from you. So combsmusic.com.
And speaking of down at the bottom of the page, you'll see down at the bottom of the page, combsmusic.com. So there'll be a link that if you want to go out and check out the book, check out the music, it'll all be there. Until next time, this was Dave Combs' story, and now you're more fluent in it.
Like me.